Ladies and gentlemen, sorry to say, this is the last chapter that I'm going to be filming these horrible lectures for. So, hope you enjoyed. Alright, chapter 21, solid and hazardous waste. What are solid wastes and hazardous wastes, and why are they problems? Well, let's find out. I'm excited to find out. Types of solid waste. Or types of waste. First one, solid. So, under solid waste, the umbrella, what two categories do we have? We've got industrial solid waste and municipal solid waste. And you have to know the difference between the two. So, industrial solid waste, obviously, produced by industrial processes, industries, right? The manufacturing of stuff, the generation of power, mines, finding ore, minerals, or other resources, and agriculture, all right? Now, municipal solid waste is the stuff that you produce at your house, all right, using the products that are generated by the industrial waste process. So your garbage and your trash, the things that you put into the dumpster and then drag out once or twice a week to be picked up, that is municipal solid waste. So it includes your paper products, this is a bunch of paper, food wastes, cans, bottles, your discarded metal pieces, plastic pieces, etc., etc., etc. Next, types of waste, hazardous. So you do need to know this definition. What makes something considered hazardous or toxic? Well, it has to be either poisonous, chemically reactive, corrosive, or flammable. All right? So make sure you star this, put it down, memorize that. You need to know those different distinctions. Poisonous, chemically reactive, corrosive, or flammable. Examples, solvents, paint thinners, pesticides, mercury, all the kind of good stuff, lead, cadmium, you know. Who produces the most? We do in the United States. We're number one. Yes, very good. But of course, whenever we're compared to any other country, what other country are they typically comparing us to? It is, of course, China. And they will be number one in the near future. Alright, so again, remember, whenever they compare us to anything, who produces the most air pollution, who consumes the most amount of fossil fuels, etc., etc., we're usually number one. And then when they say, who's going to overtake the United States or is close on our heels, it's always China. China. There's a solid waste in the United States. We are only 4.6% of the world's population. 4.6% of the world's population. 4.6%. Yet, we produce 33%, or 1/3 of the world's solid waste. That's crazy. 5% of the population producing 1/3 of the solid waste. But a little side note, a little fun fact. Part of the reason for that is because most of the products that we buy, right, 90% of the consumer products that are consumed here in the United States are in the trash, which then ends up in a landfill 6 months after the date of purchase. Isn't that crazy? Think about it. Most of the crap we buy is like, pick it up for dirt cheap. We use it for a little bit and then toss it away because it breaks, because it's made cheap. It's made to be bought, consumed, break quickly, throw away, and you buy another one. Where does most of the solid waste come from? 3/4, 76% is from mining. It's huge. It's obviously number one. So start that. And then agriculture is the second largest. Industrial, 9.5%. Municipal, that's you guys, 1.5%. Alright, e-waste. This is electronic waste. That's what the E stands for. So U.S. produces 50% of the world's e-waste. Alright, so just think about your cell phone. Think about how many cell phones have you had since you got your first cell phone, right? I'm guessing most of you guys got your first cell phone when you were like 10-ish, maybe, I think. Now you guys are 18, so it's been 8 years. Just stop for a minute and count and try and go back through memory lane. How many cell phones have you had? How many laptops, computers, tablets are currently in your home right now? How many laptops, computers, tablets have you personally owned or have been yours? See, it starts to add up real quick, right? So, start this right here. Actually, wait a minute. Let me see here. 70% of the world's electronic waste is shipped to China. And I'll talk about that in 1 second. Start this. International Basel Convention prevents transferring hazardous waste from developed to developing countries. Because what we do is we made really stringent regulations on e-waste, how it can be processed, what we're supposed to do with it, which was great because it kept this toxic material from getting into our land, the breakdown getting into our water, the processing of it, making chemicals that get into our atmosphere. But what we did is we just took them and decided, well, since it's so environmentally, the regulations are so environmentally tough, we can't deal with it here. We'll just ship it to countries where they don't have any of those regulations, and we'll make them deal with it. So this convention said, no, you can't do that. You got to start taking care of it yourself. USA, Afghanistan, and Haiti are the only countries that didn't ratify the convention. Now, the U.S. didn't because, guess what? We don't want to deal with it. We don't want to deal with this waste. And Afghanistan and Haiti didn't sign it because they're countries that often ship in that waste and process it. And it makes a lot of small businesses for those people. So they didn't want to sign it because they wanted to continue getting it, even though it's toxic for them. I think there's I don't know if it was in your book or not, or if I just saw it in a video, but they show some guy taking an old computer chip card, right, which has tons and tons of lead and stuff like that on there. It's what they use to solder all those joints together. And he would take that chip, throw it in his frying pan, heat it up until the metal melted off. And he would take that liquid metal, pour it into a container, right, and then he was going to go sell it back to some metal dealer in his area. Anyway, then he took that metal pan after, because it's the only metal pan he has, because he's freaking poor from a third world country, and then he went and he cooked some food on it for his family. These people are getting poisoned like crazy, so it's nuts. E-waste, unfortunately, is not classified as hazardous, even though it meets some of those standards. And you guys know this, I think from an activity I did in class, so 1 pound of electronics creates 8,000 pounds of waste. Wow. Alright, solid waste in the home. What kind of solid waste do you produce? So let's look at the first 3. Paper and cardboard, 37%. Yard waste, 12%. Food waste, 11%. Add those 3 up really quick. Okay. For those of you who struggle with math, that is 60%. 60%. So, paper and cardboard, yard waste, and food waste are all blank. What word am I looking for? They're all, hopefully you went with the word biodegradable. If you did, pat yourself on the back. If not, I'm ashamed. No, I'm kidding. So, 60% of the waste that we are producing in the home is biodegradable. Yard waste and food waste, you could take care of right at your home with a compost pile. The paper and cardboard waste could be sent to a specific facility that deals with that material that sometimes has chemical additives that you don't really want in your personal compost pile, but they can deal with. So this stuff can be reduced in size and quantity and used for later on agricultural purposes because it would degrade into great, highly nutrient high material. But instead, most of it ends up in a landfill where it gets encased in clay. More on that later. And then doesn't really biodegrade at all. It just sits there and takes up tons and tons of space. So that's a shame. Start composting this stuff. All right, this would have to be done through legislation. So somebody go become, involved in politics and solve that issue for us. Anyway, the rest, plastics, metals, others, make up the other 40% of what you throw away. And that's it for 21-1.